Chapter 5. Per Snips. It was the end of the week that had begun with Sunday, Monday holiday and the clearing of the basement of the barn. It was Saturday. The man opened the kitchen door. The little hen was waiting for him on the doorsill. The man finished putting on his jacket and picked her up. "It beats me, little hen, but every morning there you are again, safe and sound and all in one piece. How you manage to live through the nights with all that comes out of the big swamp to roam this farm at night. Gosh, there's even foxes in that swamp. I can't figure it out. Without toes, you sure can't roast up. And why? Something doesn't get you wherever you hide out on the ground. Well, they haven't found you yet. And it's fine if it lasts." He suddenly tapped the shoulder of his jacket. "See that? I don't know how you managed to stay alive, but I'm betting on you to last. So last night I sewed your flippers on this jacket. Permanently," he snickered. "If yesterday I didn't catch myself rushing into the barn on the big farm with your rubber flippers still pinned to my shirt. Boy, if the boss had seen that. Well, I suppose it is kind of goofy flippers on the shoulders. But now, all I have to remember is to take the jacket off before I rush off to the big farm." Planted the little hen's knuckle bones in the socket. A sudden storm of crackling sound of the high hen house made the man put a supporting hand over the little hen and run for the horse barn. At the top of the stairway, he took precaution to knock on the door, so as not to panic the flock once more. Then he opened the door. The whole flock rushed to him, crowded around him, eyes excited and flickery and alert. But the man waded through the flock. From the water fountain stand hung a hen. She hung upside down, caught by one foot. The bloodied white hen hung limp still, wings fallen open. The caught hen had obviously slammed against the ceiling in her panic. Then, in all her fall, had trapped her foot in the brains of the stand, and there she hung, helplessly upside down. And it being odd for a chicken to hang upside down, it being queer, different, the flock had turned on her to destroy her. The man pulled her free, examined her. "You silly fools," he said angrily. "You cannibals. The moment one of you is helpless, all of you turn on her. And where were you?" he shouted at the rooster. "Helping to rip her into pieces, I suppose, when you should have protected her. You and your evil, stupid little brain." He strode to the opening in the wall, yanked up and the slide door. "Out!" he yelled. "Out! Roam in the fields. Find your own food. That will keep you busy. That will leave you no time for deviltry." The white hens poured through the opening, slid and flitted and ran happily down the long ramp. The big rooster strutted past the man, crowded towards the opening amongst his streaming flock. Suddenly, the man kicked out at him. The little red hen on his shoulder chose that moment to nibble excitedly at the man's cheek. It startled the man. "Hey," he said, coming down. "It gets you at times. So much stupidity and so much meanness. Meanness because of stupidity," he exclaimed suddenly. "I'm no better. I'm ashamed. Kicking that rooster. Maybe the chickens were acting human. But I've got to get to the big farm. I'm late." He hurried down the stairs with the white hen in his arms and the little red hen bubbling on his shoulder. "The hay barn," he shouted. He suddenly told the white hen. "That's where I'll put you, up in the hay barn. The flock can't get you at there. Then tonight I'll wash off the dried blood so it won't attract those cannibals to you again." He grabbed a handful of grain on his way out of the house barn and ran to the pump and filled a coffee can with water. He tucked the bottom corner of one of the big double doors away from the walls, held it with his knees, reached in and shoved the grain, coffee can, and the white chicken inside. He ran for the car. The little hen teetered on his shoulder, balancing herself the best she could. One wing slid over the man's nose as he stopped to get in the car. Hey! Forgot you in the excitement. Imagine me coming on the big farm with you on my shoulder. He tugged the little hen out of the rubber socket and set her on the ground. But she hopped and fluttered up against his leg, wanting to be put back. The man ground down at her. No! You can't come along. But tomorrow's Sunday. Tomorrow is my free day. And hanged if I don't take the time from clearing the barn tomorrow to find out where you keep yourself nights. It can't last. That swamp's too close. He pulled his jacket off, weighted it, and drew it in the back of the car. Golly, if you'd only change a little game. Wait for me at the kitchen door evenings instead of mornings. I've got a box behind the stove with straws and everything. You could sleep there. Then I'll know you are safe. But tomorrow I'll try to find out. Got to go now. I'm late. He ran. In the big, high-vaulted barn, the white hen sat for a moment exactly where the man had shoved her. Then she stood up, head high, neck twisting in alarm, eyes flickering in all points in great, hushed and closed space. Buried sunlight streamed through the shrinks between the long, upright boards in the walls. Buried shoulders stretched over the wall. Silently, the hen began wading high, legged through the layers of the hay. Then she ran faster, until she melted herself in the blind, squealing fight. She huddled against the walls where sunlight stripped through the shrinks. She fell back, landed in some piled hay in the corner. A pile of hay exploded under her. In paralyzed surprise, the hen sat sunk in hay, looking glassy-eyed at the huge black dog that had burst up in the hay from the hay. The dog looked strangely at the chicken. For a moment, they stood motionless before each other. Then a single alarmed clack welled up in the chicken. She began clacking, and as if the clacking sound wound her up, she marched up again, stopped again, and ran, and flew up in a wind-welted clacking, as if propelling herself up on the great scrolls of crackles. She landed on the big crossbeam, high against the peaked roof. She paced there, head flopping, clacking, telling herself heuristical things about the scary huge dog in the strange, silent, huge place. From far down the road came the fading rattlings of the old car. The dog pricked up his ears, listened to the faint sound. He stood quiet, but he was shaking. It had been a close call when the man had suddenly jerked the door away from the wall and shoved a handful of corn and coffee can with water at him. It had been a close call, but not a total surprise. From the time the man had stepped out of the kitchen door and picked up the little hen, the dog followed the man every move by following the walls of the barn and barn and peering through the strings between the boards. But the big hay doors were solid, and the man had come from the pump. He had been out of the view of the dog. Then the man had suddenly jerked at the doors, and his hand had stretched towards the dog. There hadn't been a moment to lose. On a silent lope, the dog had gone across the barn and had plunged into the hay for hiding. But the man had not come. Now the car was rattling away, and there was only the crackling chicken. Paying no attention to the hen on the beam, the dog trotted back to the doors. He lapped up the water in the coffee can, then hungrily bit into the grain. He crushed again the grain kernels under hard teeth. The chicken stared nervously down at the sound of his eating. Behind the dog there was a dull plop, and there was a sound of splatter. The dog whipped around. On the high beam, the terrified hen had laid an egg. Now, without a single crackling coming from her, she stood neck stretched down, peering in stupid surprise at the fallen, shattered egg. The dog trotted over and sniffed at an egg splatter on the tuft of hay. Then eagerly he wolfed the egg, hay, dust and all. He hunted up the pieces of the eggshell and crunched them between his teeth. Then there was no more. The dog looked up at the chicken, looked at the spot where the egg had splattered, stood as if thinking. He looked up at the chicken again, and now his tail waved. He had made a great discovery. Chickens lay eggs, and eggs were food, tasty food. And food was his problem, the everlasting, everyday problem. The dog had made this place his home, but there was no food for him in his adopted, stolen home. There wasn't even a tossed-out table scrap. The man ate most of his meals at the big farm, and the man did not know he was there. The man set out food for the little red hen under the shrunk-down crate at the kitchen door, but the little hen could not climb the ramp to the food in the hoppers in the kitchen in the hen house. The man had made the crate with an opening at one end too small for the bigger white white hens, and far too small for the dog's big head. And there had been days of the week when the dog had lain flat before the small opening on the potato crate as the little hen ate inside the crate. And sometimes, in ashamed, puppish whine, he had begged the little hen under the crate for a morsel of chicken food. But now the dog settled himself firmly on the haunches, sat in the hay under the high beam, waiting for the chickens to lay another egg for him. Other mornings, he would have waited only long enough for the last rattle of the car to die away down the road. Then he would have lunged at the loosened board of the wall, would have lowered himself down on the outside wall, would have dropped headlong to the wagon box, and would have leaped to the ground to eat scattered grain with the chickens. Because of the little red hen, the man had started a new custom. Instead of tossing the grain onto the straws of the high hen house, he had taken to scattering it over the barnyard, so that the little red hen could eat the flock. From the morning, the dog had made skewed use of the man's new way of feeding the flock. But it took time to get down from the barn. By the time the dog had waited for the old car and had made his painful way down from the barn, the flock had already picked up most of the grain. He had to pick up the leavings and roved and ranged and scrounged with the flock. A big black dog amongst white chickens, searching busily for grain beside the little hen. With his nose, he'd learned to smell without hidden grain kernels. Even then, the little red hen, quick and darted, often picked up the kernel from under his nose, but the big dog starved, would not growl or snap at her. He was her protector. The dog sat patiently waiting for the high hen to lay another egg. This morning, he was in no hurry. He knew that the man had driven to the hens out of the hen house and had scattered no grain for the flock. It was a lean life, picking things and surroundings and single kernels of grains for his huge, hungry body. Yesterday, in desperation of his hunger, the dog had turned to the fence in the garden beside the house, having leaned to climb the ropes and tangled his legs from sagging rack of hay, loaded to trap the door in the ceiling. He had taught himself to climb the woven wire fence into the garden, but it was last year's garden, and only a few old tomatoes, winter frozen and spring rotted, had still lain there. He'd bitten one and he'd found it repulsive, but then he'd found a row of turnips that had been left in the ground over the winter. He'd found the turnips brittle and hard and sweet, in a faint, far-fetched way, almost as sweet as crunchy as a bone. He had pulled up the turnips one by one and had lain down with them, grounding them, chiseling them, and sharp front teeth as he would good bone. And for the first time in a week, his stomach had felt firm and full. Later, he had rested in the hayloft of the barn and longed his tongue and lingered the sweetness of the full filling, the brave, sure feeling of enough food, and it was decent and good. Oh, it was no life for a dog, this chicken life amongst chickens. But it was a life and it was a home, even though it was a stolen home. And now it had been his life for almost a week. Daily, his new life began with the last rattle of the old car fading away down the road. It ended in the evening when the old car came back, rattling back. The rest of his life was hiding. When the car brought the man back home, the dog went into hiding. He set his time by the sounds of the car. The old rattle-ramp car was his alarm clock. The dog's half-hidden life had begun when, in desperation, he had climbed the hay loader and pushed through the trapped door to the upper barn. By doing so, he had found himself the best hiding place he possibly could have found anywhere on the little farm. And even if it had been an accident, it was screwed of the dog that he had continued to use his hiding place. It had been by accident that the dog had lunged across the barn and skated and crashed against the board in his attempt to get to the rooster and the little hen. But it was shrewd of the dog that he had continued to use the loosened board with a way to get away in a way, with a way to get in and a way to get out. The upper hay barn had worked out as perfect hiding place, the only place where the man never came. But through every shrink between the boards along the walls, the dog could watch the men. The rattles of the old car were the dog's warning by the day. The lights of the house were his guide by the night. When the lights were last went out in the house, the dog would come out of the hiding to drop down from the barn to the old wagon to sleep and protect the little hen in the wagon box through the night. Fortunately, the little hen always awoke at the crack of dawn to hurry to wait for the man at the kitchen door. Then the dog would jump down from the wagon too and hurry into the hiding for an hour or two until the time had come when the old car again would rattle away to take the man to work for the day on the big farm down the road. If all this fitted into a plan, it was simple, single plan. The dog was going to have a home. It was that simple, and it was that great. But now the dog sat patiently waiting for the white hen up on the high beam to lay another egg for him. Outside the barn, there was a pained squawk of the little red hen in the barnyard. In his week, the dog had learned to distinguish the sound from the other barnyard sounds. He lunged towards the loosened board. So we are going to read chapter 6 the following day.